Ultimately, in the end, you're just trying to get lucky. Seriously, you are.
Yeah, I mean, that's like all fantasy, like standard fantasy stuff.
Yeah. That Dolphins game, dude. Are you kidding me?
It was fun.
They were up 56-13, and I'm like, that game must be over. I look at 14:55 in the fourth quarter.
Nothing makes my heart happier than someone just pounding Russell Wilson. I hate that guy.
Why?
He's the biggest coward in all of football.
What do you mean coward?
He's a fraud, and he comes off with this church boy persona, which is the most annoying thing on planet Earth. I hate Russell Wilson. Plus, he sucks.
He made one really nice throw to Cortland Sutton in the corner end zone, and then that was it.
He was my commencement speaker when I graduated. I just about threw up.
Oh, you didn't like him even back then?
He went to Wisconsin for one semester, and now he's their commencement speaker. No, I hate it.
I've never heard you spew such vitriol towards a player before.
He might be my least favorite player in the NFL.
Oh, you don't say. This sounds like it.
They should have kept Drew Lock when they had the chance.
Drew, that guy stinks.
He's better than Russell Wilson.
But at the same time, they wouldn't be paying Drew Lock all that money either. So,
And Sean Payton is a complete doofus. I hope they lose every game.
I'll tell you this much, though. Yeah, okay, so I had a break-even day yesterday. Afternoon slate, showdown got me back. But so like yesterday was kind of a wash for DFS, but those best ball lineups, my full Miami onslaughts are not looking too bad right now.
No, I'm sure they're looking. They didn't even have Waddle, which is the craziest
I know.
part.
You know what though? I'm looking at this. It's only 3 weeks in, so it doesn't necessarily mean anything. The one approach I took was I was like, I'm gonna do things a little differently. I went late quarterback in a lot of these leagues, like in a lot of my drafts, like the Tuas and the Kirk Cousins and the Genos and stuff like that. So far, I'm not highly regretful of the decision.
No, especially in best ball. There was the guys even later than that. Stroud, Jordan Love. I mean,
I was trying to grab those guys as my QB. You and I talked about how much we had to those guys before the season started. Yeah.
A lot of Bryce Young, too. I think he'll come along once he's a little healthier. Andy Dalton looked fine.
Yeah.
I was never down on those weapons. I mean, he looks like he's a little in over his head compared to Stroud, but hopefully they'll come around. But yeah, those later on quarterbacks, such good value on them.
Adam Thielen is very alive.
Guy, need 10 yards, he's going to get you 8. Guaranteed.
Yeah. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stochastic.com NFL Strategy Show. Another Monday doubleheader. Can we just have these every week, please? Just give me doubleheader every week. Started at 7. That's all I ask. So then even if I'm tired and I don't want to stay up for the end of the conclusion of this 8.5 or 8:15 game, I can be like, all right, I watched 7 quarters of football today. We're good. Happy to have you guys with us. Hopefully you had a great weekend. We're back for more big slate today, all things considered. Some big contests out there. You got the Eagles, you got the Bucks, you got the Bengals hosting the Rams. We'll see what happens with Joe Burrow. Going to break all of that down right here, 9 a.m. on the East Coast. So if you're with us on the West Coast, good morning. Same with you on the East and Midwest, you guys as well, I guess. But anyway, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Just take 1 single second, atone for your sins here on a Monday morning, and let's get rocking. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. So help us get to 100K, man. And if you're listening in podcast form, that's cool too. We know you're out there. I know some people might not have YouTube Premium. You know, they want to listen with their phone off or driving on a commute, wherever it is. Maybe they're just at home. Well, you can in podcast form, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever it is you listen. Even some of those old, outdated, archaic podcast platforms that 7 of you still listen on, we upload there as well. Leave us a rating, a review, subscribe to the pod, and check out our podcast exclusive content every Tuesday and every Friday. We have 2 shows, about 25, 30 minutes apiece that only come out on podcast, not on YouTube. So make sure to do that. Single entry, 3 max strategy. And then Sunday afternoon. If you listen to our Sunday afternoons strategy, you probably did pretty well yesterday. We talked about how much Rondale Moore we were getting. And that guy, welcome back, fella. Can you believe that, Matt? By the way, I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D on the X, LOUGHY_D. Joined by Matt Gajewski at Matt Gajewski. There were a lot of crazy games yesterday. Miami dropping 70. Chiefs unsurprisingly smoking the Bears. Houston and CJ Stroud. I like this kid, man. Eric and I had a big debate about this. He hasn't thrown an interception yet. And Tank Dell and Nico Collins both have a top 5 fantasy finish. And we're 3 weeks into the season with a rookie quarterback. But the Dallas Cowboys losing by 12 to the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, what do you make of that?
So I didn't see the game. I was at the Packer game yesterday. All I can go is just looking at the data with little context. But I'll fall back on my priors. Dallas was a team I was not high on coming into the season. Their defense is solid, but Dak Prescott has been nothing but a middling signal caller. And they moved from Kellen Moore to Mike McCarthy calling plays. Mike McCarthy has torpedoed more offenses than he's, coached solid play out of. So losing to the Cardinals, there's no excuse for it. They're one of the worst teams in football. They've actually been surprisingly a little bit frisky to start the year, but I mean, you can't be losing to these teams if you're allegedly a team with Super Bowl aspirations. It's just honestly pretty laughable.
I tweeted this yesterday I posted this yesterday. The Arizona, like one big revelation this year, the Arizona Cardinals through 3 weeks have had way more life in them than the Broncos, than the Bears, with a fraction of the talent, Matt. Like, listen, I'm not saying there aren't a couple guys that might end up being good in Arizona. Budda Baker's on the IR, though. They have Joshua Dobbs at quarterback. This team has a collection of nobodies and cast-offs. And here they are, almost beating Washington in Washington week 1. What was last week? Didn't they take that down to the
the
Giants? Sure, they squandered a massive lead. But that game, they were 5-point dogs, ended up being a 3-point game, and then a 12-point win against the Dallas Cowboys, who nobody would shut up about the Cowboys. The most dominant defense we've seen in a while. No turnovers. Best special teams. Just lost by 12 to the Cardinals. So
sounds like Cowboys fans.
Yeah, and that also sounds like the Cowboys. I was having an argument with not an argument, a debate. I was talking about no, the Cowboys are for real. And I was like, they very well, this was a couple of weeks ago. So they very well might be. But you got to show me more than 2 weeks because we've seen this story play out before, right? With a lot of these teams. One other thing I did want to talk about, and then we'll get into this this week 3 finale, really. Well, encore 2-game slate. What do you make of this Houston team right now? Because they seem to be playing with some life in them as well. Did you see Andrew Beck? Please tell me you saw the Andrew Beck punt return touchdown. Please tell me you saw that.
Yeah, he's funny. He's like an H-back tight end. He went to Texas. So he's a pretty talented player. He just kind of plays an obsolete position in the NFL. Special teamer, but put that more on Jacksonville. Like, I don't know what the hell they were doing out there. But, I mean, you love big guy touchdowns, especially when you're rumbling 65 yards down the field on what is a botched kickoff return. I don't know. It was hilarious more than anything.
He pulled a Deshaun Jackson with the muffed punt, picked it up, kept his feet in back. It was really amazing. But what do you think of CJ Stroud after 3 weeks? You know, they say a rising tide lifts all ships. Well, the quarterback is the tide on any team, essentially, along with the offensive line. Tank Dell looks awesome. Nico Collins, not a great game yesterday, but week 2, huge game. Robert Woods continues to get targeted. And this team can't even get they faced 3 good run defenses. They can't establish anything on the ground. And I know that they lost the first 2 weeks, but they came in and shit on Jacksonville yesterday, and Stroud had an impeccable game.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like Joe Burrow early in his career where he was playing behind that horrific offensive line, which is the case with Houston. They're down 4 starters there still. But he's putting together exciting offensive performances that you can be excited about. And Houston does have some good pieces on the offensive line. They're just hurt. So when they get those guys back, whether it's this year or in future seasons, you should be pretty optimistic. And you'd think the Texans are probably going to be an attractive place for whatever free agent pass catchers come up in the market in coming years. You get to play with CJ Stroud with a team that's clearly on the rise finally at this point. But yeah, I don't know if they're for real. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, but they're at least exciting right now. So that's why I kind of liken them to their early career Joe Burrow Bengals.
Yeah, I said it yesterday. I don't expect this team to be good, but at least I think the days might be over of where you can't target any pass catchers ever on this team. You know what I mean?
For sure. 100% agree.
Yeah. They've been fun. Jackson, some really embarrassing losses yesterday for a couple of teams, but let's talk Monday night. We're hitting 50 likes here out of the gate. I know it's early, guys, but only takes a second. We'll go position by position. Of course, we got live before lock and deeper dive tonight. We're hitting them both. Actually, matter of fact, here's what we're doing. We're doing the deeper dive leading up to 7:15. And then we've got a live before lock for the showdown slate. So if you get your lineups locked in for the main slate, the 2-game main slate, and then you want to stick around, do a little multitasking, throw the game on, open up your phone, your iPad, or your laptop, and have that live before lock going for the showdown slate between the Rams and Bengals while the Eagles and Bucks play, we got you covered, man. We're hitting you from all angles today, and hopefully it helps. All right, you ready for this? We'll go position by position, kick it off with quarterback. Weird game. You know, the running backs are basically all the same price on this slate for the most part until you get down to the Gainwells and Sean Tuckers. But what do you want to do at the top with Jalen Hurts? I'll tell you out of the gate, Matt. I don't like this matchup for Jalen Hurts. It doesn't mean I don't think he can produce. It doesn't mean I don't think he's the highest ceiling option on this slate, especially given Joe Burrow's nagging calf injury. But boy, does this matchup worry me.
What worries you specifically about it?
One, I think this team is excellent at slowing down rushing quarterbacks with their linebackers and Winfield and those type of guys. They are good at limiting rushing. They swarm to the ball. That concerns me. Also, you know, a few years ago when the Eagles made 2 years ago, I think, when they made the playoffs. Who's the DC for the Bucks? I can't remember his name.
I don't recall either.
Hold on. It might have even been Todd Bowles that said, I can't remember, but or Casey Rogers, can't remember. But they're like, hey, Jalen Hurts can't read. And they weren't talking about reading a book. They're like, he can't read defense as well. They disguised a bunch of shit, and he ended up getting slaughtered. I think he's a way different quarterback than he was before, but I just have a lot of respect for this Tampa Bay defense. And I think it's the stiffest test he's going to face this year. Maybe the Patriots was up there as well, but no concerns for you. You like this spot for Hurts?
I think they're a fine defense. I think they're weaker on the back end after, you know, losing some guys in their secondary from the last couple of years.
That is also a problem. That is a check in the positive box for Hurts with the injuries that they suffered.
I 100% agree with you up front. They're very, very stiff run defense with Vita Vea. He is questionable for this game. I expect him to play. He was on the injury report all week, but they're pretty deep, not just at D tackle. They've addressed really the edge group year over year in the NFL draft. So no Kalijah Kancey, their rookie from Pitt, but you've got Barrett and Joe Tryon is a former first rounder. Like they have really good edge rushers, linebackers extremely deep for this team too. So hopefully you can just have manufactured pass protection, keep Jalen Hurts upright, and beat these team over the top with Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and AJ Brown. So it's not the best matchup by any means. I'm not going to downgrade Hurts a ton. It doesn't sound like you are either, for the record, but
No.
I think through the air is where I would like to attack Hurts tonight, to your point on the stiff run defense that we've seen from Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I don't really know how you could downgrade him even if you wanted to, because that would probably force you into upgrading guys like Joe Burrow. Matthew Stafford is interesting, and we'll talk about him. Baker Mayfield. It's not like Baker Mayfield has it. I think Baker Mayfield could be under duress all game. I mean, this Eagles front on defense is could torment him today. So there's a lot of different ways this goes. But the thing too is you look at these injuries to the Bucs, they've got some significant names that are questionable today. Not just Vita Vea, but Devin White has the Q tag. Carlton Davis has the Q tag. Kalijah Kancey has the Q is out. So I mean, I would assume that the questionable guys play. But if any of them are out, that makes this defense look a whole lot rougher. If Devin White ends up not playing, that's a huge positive for Jalen Hurts and this Eagles offense.
Yeah, 100% agree. The other thing is it's not hard to play Jalen Hurts. I mean, like, after week one, people across the industry and DFS just complain about tight pricing from DraftKings. They soften it up, and like tonight, you can play whoever you want with Hurts, and it doesn't even matter. So the other thing I'll say about playing Hurts is, if you don't play him, you're probably gaining a massive leverage on the field, just because, like, for those of you in the chat, go build a lineup right now. Like, I just put in Hurts, Jamar Chase, Nakua, AJ Brown, and I had no issue. Like, I'm not even playing scrubs. The slate is soft as hell.
The highest priced running back is $6,300 Mixon.
I mean, it is so easy to play Hurts tonight. If you don't play him, you're probably gaining a ton of leverage.
You would think so. Highest priced tight end is $4,800 Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
Tough spot for him, I think, but we'll get there. Yeah, it's tough. Injury news is going to be massive for this one too. I really like, a lot of times you and I might not say we were doing a full main slate. We might not spend as much time on injury news because it's so much easier to pick your spots. But on a 2-game slate, defensive injury news. On a 2-game slate, defensive injury news to key players is going to be really, really significant.
Yeah, it is. Especially with this Tampa Bay team, I think in particular.
Sure.
I didn't see as much in the other game in particular. Most of those injuries were offensive, but this is a key spot, I think, to the slate with how owned these Eagles players are going to be.
Yeah, so the Eagles get Reed Blankenship back. They get James Bradbury back as too, which I assumed would be the case. They were out last Thursday, but it was a short week, only 3 days rest. The thought had to have been like, all right, even if these guys probably could play, keep them out, and then we have 11 days until our next game. Avonte Maddox is on the IR, likely out for the season. The Kobe Dean on the IR, but that was after week one. So for the most part, the Eagles look pretty healthy. The only guy outside of Maddox that, of significance that is out would be Quez Watkins on offense. And that, they'll probably just throw Zacchaeus in there and some opportunity. Actually, I'm not sure who they would throw in that role. It has to be Zacchaeus, but we'll talk about it. Kenny Gainwell's back. But at quarterback, once you get past Jalen Hurts, what are your options? Like Joe Burrow, probably a legitimate game time decision, or we know prior to that, and it helps us. If he does, we found out after week 2 that this team had actually been kind of limiting the playbook for him, trying to get the ball out quicker to avoid further re-aggravation of the injury. And even that didn't work. It looked like earlier in the week he wasn't going to play. He was with the scout team on Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday he's with the starters. He's apparently lobbying to play, but we have no idea. What do you do with Joe Burrow as the lone mid-range quarterback today after seeing really, if it's fair to say, I think 7 of 8 quarters that he's played have been really bad.
Yeah, I would sit him if I was the Bengals. I mean, I don't see what upside you have in playing him. You can say he's better than your backup, but he's so limited you're losing games with him on the field anyway. So get him healthy, play him later in the season, and maybe you sneak into the playoffs as a wild card because you're just going to lose games with him sitting out, and you're going to lose with him playing injured. So it's kind of a lose-lose until you get him healthy. For the purposes of this slate, if you're playing low stakes or small field stuff, I don't see the need to play him. Just play Hurts. He's not hard to get. If you're playing stuff like, there's no Millie Maker tonight, but there's a 500K up top. If you're playing that, that's where I would start to consider Joe Burrow, just strictly based on upside he's shown with his arm in the past. But for small field stuff, I don't think I'm going to play anyone other than Hurts.
Really?
Probably not. I mean, the only way I see you getting away from him is if you're playing stuff with a huge field. Like, there's just no point otherwise.
Where you're leaving salary and just doing it to be contrarian, basically.
Yeah, but the field needs to be big enough to consider that. So, like, small field stuff, I don't know why you would fade him.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but this matchup for Baker Mayfield seems problematic. Is it possible that this Tampa Bay team is, considerably better than we've seen, and that Baker Mayfield is good enough to get the job done? It's possible, but we've also seen Baker Mayfield now in 2 games go up against the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. I mean, you're not getting easier matchups than that, right? The Chicago Bears are as broken as it comes right now. This team, it's utter turmoil. Look, that's just the truth. They're in a lot of trouble right now. That defense, and sure, they've dealt with some injuries on both sides of the ball, but that defense is terrible. So now if you're going into this spot against this Eagles front, I don't want to ignore that. They have an insane rotation on this. They can just throw anybody they want in at any time, Matt, and just keep guys fresh throughout the entirety of this game. It's a tough spot for him. And then you have Bradbury and Darius Slay back on the boundaries. So losing Maddox is a big deal, but Reed Blankenship has played well as an undrafted player. This is a tough match. This is by far the toughest matchup for Baker Mayfield, without question.
100% agree. And, it sucks that the biggest part of this slate is DraftKings soft pricing. So to some degree, the football doesn't matter a ton because you don't need to consider Baker Mayfield unless you're playing a tournament that's just big enough where you simply need to look for ways to be different. So that's kind of frustrating, first of all. If you are playing the tournaments of that size, Baker Mayfield is my favorite pivot because of the upside he's shown. He runs a little bit. They're using him on designed runs, which is kind of unique. No one's really ever done that in his career. And he has solid pass catchers too. The only problem is, I don't know, unless you're leaving salary on the table, what are you paying down for him for? What does it get you? It doesn't get you anything extra. So with Baker Mayfield and Stafford, I just don't see the point unless you're playing the Millie Maker or the 500K up top.
Sure. I can tell you this much though. And you probably would even know where I'm going with this before I say it. But if I am playing Baker Mayfield, and obviously you'd want a pass catcher there, right? For me, I think that the most obvious spot is Chris Godwin. I really do. Let's go back and look because he's running almost 50% of his snaps routes out of the slot this year, lining up in the slot almost 50% of the time, right? How much for Mike Evans? Let's see. 20% in the slot. If you're the Tampa Bay Bucks and you look at what Bill O'Brien did with the Patriots in week 1, completely avoided the boundaries, completely avoided Darius Slay, completely avoided Bradbury, and they just peppered the middle of the field, got the ball out early before the Eagles could get to the quarterback. I think if you're Baker Mayfield and you are this Tampa Bay Bucks team, the wisest decision would be try to replicate that same formula that the Patriots had, that in the event that they had a better receiver, they probably win that game. So I think Chris Godwin could have one of those double-digit target games if they do, in fact, try and get the ball out early. Because the last thing you want against this Eagles team is to hold the ball for longer than you have to.
Yeah, I love Chris Godwin. I think he's a very talented player. And Mike Evans has had a couple big games through 2 weeks so far this year, which is awesome. Mike Evans is a great player in his own right. But we know these two ebb and flow. We have a long history with these two guys on the field at the same time to know that it's not just, Mike Evans going to dominate through the year. Both extremely talented players, similar to like a Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They're both going to have big games. It's predicting when those might occur. I think you laid out a really strong case matchup-wise why Godwin could be the guy you target this week. And you're also getting a price discount with him. Again, I don't think it really matters on this slate. But at the same time, the 600 can go somewhere if you're looking to pay up for studs at other positions. I think both Tampa Bay pass catchers are honestly too cheap here. And even if you're not using Mayfield, you probably want one of them in a decent amount of your lineups. Not really getting an ownership edge by playing one or the other. So I think going down to Godwin and looking at the matchups does make a lot of sense here.
Any other quarterbacks you want to get to before we dive into these running backs, which, man, this should be fun to break down.
I think the slate begins when we start talking the other positions.
I agree.
So not to be like super negative on the quarterbacks, but it's just like there's a large gap between Hurts and the other people. And then I'm only targeting Stafford, Burrow if it's him, and Mayfield if the tournament's large enough. So yeah, that's really all it is at quarterback for me. It's all dependent on your field size.
By the way, while we talk running backs here, I'm going to run a pre-contest sim with our lineup simulator. I want to see what our exposures look like right now to Jalen Hurts. I'll favorite the top 150 and see what it comes in at. And I'll go, you're talking large field, so I'll go 30%. I'll go 25% payout to first place. And I'm just going to unadulterated sim run. I'm not going to change any settings. I'm just going to run this and see what we come up with. By the way, if you guys still haven't done so yet, Owner's Box, Stochastic.com, partnership, free week of everything that we have on the site, all of our tools. You're talking the contest generator, the pre-lineup simulator, pre-contest simulator, which is fantastic, the post-contest simulator, which should be used way more by everybody after the games to see what the ROI, what the simulated ROI and the actual ROI of your lineups was. I mean, this is what people are doing that build this stuff themselves. And now it's available to the public for people like myself who aren't smart enough to build these type of tools. Awesome tools. Also, you're getting our ownership, our player projections, the top stack tool, the boom bust tool, all of our showdown content, all of our showdown tools, which is more important, like the top single game and showdown top plays tool, which are all simulations in themselves as well. It gives you the likelihood that someone's going to be the top scorer, that they're going to be the optimal captain, the optimal utility, gives you leverage scores on every player. Really great stuff. Premium Discord, lineup generator, everything's included. The link to Owner's Box is in the description and in chat. All of our tools. And I should also point out that Owner's Box is giving you a $500 first match deposit bonus. If you have the means to do so, exploit that. The minimum deposit's only $10. But take advantage of the larger deposit bonus if you can, especially, I don't know how many times I have to say this, Matt. Most people are there anyway now, but the fact that, number one, they have super flex, which is awesome. You can flex a quarterback in these lineups, go with some, insane game stacks. But the fact that and you don't have to play defense, the fact that it's overlaying at the rate that it is has been just a lot of dead money in there. Every week and contests that are like $175,000 prize pools, 50, 35K up top.
I mean, that is huge to your bottom line, playing DFS, anything like that. You want to take it. I hesitate to call it free money because you still have to win, but it increases your chances of winning by such a substantial amount that it's huge for your bottom line. And having the tools to help you with that, it makes a huge difference. And tonight, especially, like this is probably, I would say, the best night to use the tools of any slate all year. It's extremely soft pricing. If you're like asking yourself, all right, Hurts is clearly the best play at quarterback. What size field do I really need to start getting different and look at Stafford and Mayfield and all these guys? Like that's what the Sims essentially were built for. You're running lineups against other lineups in these massive fields. You can change the size of it. I'm going to lean heavily on the tools tonight because honestly, it's a pretty big mental pretzel finding out what size field I should start looking at some of these other contrarian QBs.
Oh yeah, dude. Well, I had a tweet yesterday from Yamahama that in the 3K sweep, 1K up top, it overlaid. He finished first place and just tweeted me or posted to me. I think I can get behind this overlay stuff. 3 p.m. slate, one entry, $12 into 1K over at Owner's Box. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, of course, man. Of course. So link in the description and in chat. Get the deposit bonus, number one. Take advantage of the overlay and use all of our tools for free for the entirety of the week. We have Owner's Box, projections, ownership, built into the simulator, the contest generator, the post-contest simulator, all that stuff for Owner's Box. Obviously, DraftKings and FanDuel as well. But it's good stuff, man. Check it out if you haven't yet. Get the free week. Which, by the way, if you're doing it today, you're getting Monday night main slate plus 2 showdown slates plus Thursday plus Sunday plus next Monday. Pretty good. All right. Anyway, let's talk about running backs here. I'll tell you, Joe Mixon and this offense right now, it's hard to blame him for not being fantastic. Last game he was fine. He's had double-digit fantasy points in both games, 5 targets apiece. And he's averaging almost 4.5 yards per attempt. It's just they've fallen behind in 2 games early. He hasn't actually been that bad. He's had 18 and 18 looks. He literally has 13 carries and 5 targets in both games. The game script has flipped on its head, Matt, in both of these spots, and Joe Burrow has done him no favors at all. So he's going up against the Rams, whose offense has looked way better than expected. Defense has looked suspect at best. I want to start with Mixon because he's the only guy above 6K today.
Yeah, he's a guy I'm comfortable sacrificing. I laid this out where it's very easy to get Hurts. You have to sacrifice a little bit at some positions. Like if you play Hurts in the elite receivers, you're probably not playing Mixon. You're probably going down to like Kyren and Swift. But it's still not difficult if you want to make a concession. Say not play 3 stud receivers, you go down and you play like one of the mid guys. Like Godwin, you could probably get up to Joe Mixon. So from a workload perspective, I've been pretty impressed with Mixon. They just don't seem to have the change of pace of the same caliber as like a Samaje Perine that they had in previous years. Trevion Williams, Chase Brown, these backups on the roster haven't been taking away the pass catching role from Mixon much. 5 targets last week is positive here. If he even like walks into that, I think you're looking at probably the best floor ceiling combo of any running back on this slate. They're still favored even with the uncertainty of Joe Burrow playing in this game. So I think that's positive. If he's locked in, we get news that from Schefter or something that Burrow plays, the spread probably moves a little bit in my opinion. And yeah, it's just overall the most bankable workload outside of maybe Kyren. And then you have some game environment factors that help you here.
Dude, before we get into this Philly backfield, I would like you to rank for whatever field contest you feel appropriate. Feel free to say, hey, this is what I'm doing for large field. This is what I'm doing for smaller field, single entry, 3-max stuff. Rank Mixon, Williams, and Rachaad White.
It would be that exact order for me. Mixon, Kyren Williams, then Rachaad White. I would have them very close. This is not something where I feel super confident in. And the way I'm anticipating this going for me tonight is to be heavier on Kyren and Rachaad, and then the Philly backs just due to pricing. Again, prioritizing Hurts because his ceiling separates so much more from the other signal callers. Prioritizing the expensive receivers because they also separate significantly more. Whereas Joe Mixon, I think, has the most bankable workload, but how much different is that than Rachaad White? Honestly, how much different is that than, the Philly backfield with Gainwell and Swift? I think we'll talk about that in a second, but even Mixon, if he handles a feature back workload, I don't see it being substantially different than those 2 guys here. So he is a guy I'm willing to sacrifice, and that is just a salary play here to get other stud receivers.
I'm with you. Rams defense on the ground so far has been underwhelming, I think it's fair to say. I'd say average. They've been average, but the Philly backfield, and I'm with you on White. There should be opportunities there, but in the same breath, this is a tough matchup for Rachaad White for sure. Another thing to consider too. Actually, I want to wait to get to some of these guys because this is not lost on me. I'm sure it's in the back of Matt's head as well. Last week, we saw Tony Jones Jr. and Jerome Ford essentially, in some capacity, be necessary to win this slate when Jamal Williams went down, and then when Nick Chubb went down on a 2-game Monday slate. You can't predict that to be the case again this week, but we will talk about some of these guys that are backups to the starters because wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't. I'm going to ask you a question. I can't wait to hear your answer on this, and I wouldn't blame you for being wrong. I'd be impressed if you're right. DraftKings actually has rushing yard props for Swift right now and for Gainwell. I'm not seeing them elsewhere. I'm sure they are. I haven't looked at every book. I could just go over to OddsShopper and pull it up real quick. But what do you think the rushing yard props are for those 2 guys today?
I'm going to say 52.5 on Swift, 32.5 on Gainwell.
Are you ready? I told you I wouldn't blame you for getting this wrong.
I'm sure I am wrong.
32, you're wrong, yeah. 32.5 on Swift.
Seems low.
34.5 on Gainwell.
Yeah. I mean, to the book's point, I don't know if anyone knows outside of the Philly coaching staff what's going to happen here. But if you have a good read on this, this could be a pretty good opportunity to make some money. That's all I'll say.
So Swift is over 32.5 minus 135. Gainwell's 34.5 minus 115. So essentially what you're seeing here is that DraftKings at least is projecting a split right now. And when I say projecting a split, really they're just trying to, not get hammered on one of these, even though they're player props. It's not like it's a side. So, but they're basically saying like, nobody knows, take your pick at this point. And I probably, like if I had to take one of these, Matt, I would absolutely take Swift over 32.5 before I took Gainwell. But I also just think Swift is a lot better than Kenny Gainwell. That's my thing. I think Kenny Gainwell is the most vanilla running back out there. I agree with you. He's so uninspiring. He's fine, but he's just fine.
Yeah, he's a lot like Boston Scott, except he catches more passes. They're both uninspiring backs. However, he played over DeAndre Swift week 1. Now, was DeAndre Swift's week 2 breakout enough to change the coaching staff's mind that Kenny Gainwell should be behind him? I don't know. Those are the questions you have to ask yourself. I was pretty impressed with Swift, and personally, going back all the way to our priors, DeAndre Swift, I think, is the more talented player, and he can catch balls. You can use him on third down. You can use him in any situation. It never made sense to me why Gainwell was playing over Swift. So hopefully that breakout has opened the eyes to some of the coaching staff that Swift is capable of doing it and producing. He's the guy I'm going to target a little more heavy than Gainwell, but I'm going to be playing them both for DFS.
Okay. I like it. I guess you have to.
What do you, I want to hear what you think about that, going back to the week 2 from Swift versus the Gainwell playing over him week 1. How do you personally think it plays out?
Sure. Mike, do me a favor. Try the owner's box link in the description. Tell me if that's working. Someone mentioned that they tried it and it's not working. What's Up Sports for the free week of our NFL Sims package. Also, Nicholas Lynn, super chat for you, Matt. I'm taking it, Nicholas. It's mine. This is from Matty G, making CFB and ATM for us due to all his hard work. It's a nice thing to say.
Very nice. Thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate that. CFB has been going extremely well to start the year, and we'll continue to work hard, try to parlay that success into some future wins too. But appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. Love seeing you guys winning. All right, so here's what I think is going to happen. Rashad Penny bell cow today.
Dude, crazier things have happened.
I know.
Make sure he's active because he's been inactive, and who knows.
I'm clearly joking, but you don't know. The other thing to consider too, and this is what drives me up a wall, is what would have happened to that split last week if Boston Scott didn't get hurt?
I legitimately don't know. And luckily, we don't have to worry about him today. I'm thankful that I don't have to dissect 3 Philly running backs. But honestly, Boston Scott maybe carries more than DeAndre Swift. I don't know. Coaches seem to hate DeAndre Swift.
I know. What I mean isn't that we have to worry about Boston Scott today. I'm saying, would Boston Scott have gotten a third of the carries if he didn't get hurt?
Yeah, right? I see what you're saying. And I don't know. That very well could have happened.
Yeah. Because then if that was the case, you go back and you look at it and you go, okay, well, they didn't want Swift to be the bell cow, even though he was amazing, but they had to. So I don't know. I have such a different, last year, I couldn't have been more right about the Eagles backfield. Okay. When everyone was talking about Kenny Gainwell because of practice and training camp, I was like, Miles Sanders will be the undisputed guy. And he was all season long. All right. This year, I don't know. And I wasn't right last week. I don't know this year. I really don't. And if you're asking me, like, what does logic dictate? I think you would agree that DeAndre Swift was so good last week, patient, decisive, explosive, everything, then it would be nuts not to give him a lot of work. But every single week with this Eagles team, whether it's the run game, the pass game, there's always some new wrinkle that you're left scratching your head afterwards. So personally, I prefer Swift, but you have to play some Gainwell, right? How could you not?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Just in the chance that they deviate right back to week one game plan where Kenneth Gainwell essentially is an every down player, which might be insane to say after what we saw from Swift, but they've shown that they're willing to do this in the past. And then the other thing is here, Philly, really good offense, biggest favorite on the board, highest total game. I know we only have 2, but this could be I don't think it's going to be a Miami situation, but honestly, you might just want to bet on both these guys. Be contrarian, play both of them in the same lineup, mix and match Swift and Gainwell, because we've seen Philly willing to use the hot hand at the red zone going back years now. Overall, I'm going to play some Gainwell too, just because Philly running back situation is a situation I want to bet on.
It's crazy, man. I was looking for Swift on FanDuel. I just pulled it up. And I guess I scrolled a bit and Kyron Williams was 7,600. I'm like, man, Swift must be cheap. Turns out he's $8,000 on FanDuel today. Most expensive running back. Yeah.
Kyron is very, very cheap over there. That is insane.
Who?
Kyron.
What, 7,600?
I think that's for him to be cheaper than Swift over there. But I mean, I guess he is on DraftKings too.
Well, everyone's cheaper than Swift over here.
Yeah.
Mixon 74, Rashad White 66, Gainwell 58. Man. Yeah. Okay. Let me throw it to you this way, because this is why I wanted to preface it with outside of the Philly backfield. Now, if you work the Philly backfield into all of these other plays, where do they rank for you among running backs today where there's no elite option?
I think they're pretty close to those 3 guys at the top. If you were force me to rank these backfields just based on price adjusted and where I want to be with them in my portfolio, Kyron's 1. I think it's honestly going to be the Philly backs 2 and 3, and then Rashad White, Mixon 4 and 5 in no particular order for those 2, just with upside and price adjusted backs here. Because I mean, we'll get to receivers. If you're loading up on Jamar Chase, Godwin, Evans, the AJ Brown, the studs, you need to save a little bit of money somewhere, and going down from Mixon to some of these other backs, I think, is one way you can do it.
Then how do you want to approach, and this, Matt, this is a question that's not even fair to ask, because there's really no right answer to it outside of all right, if you just want to be crazy different. We saw it was a Squirrel Patrol with the solo Millie last week with, was it Jerome Ford or Tony? It was one of those guys, right? And it wasn't even a crazy lineup as far as oh my God, he's just gone all low-owned players. There were a few spots that were just way different and separated him from the field. Do you want to look at a Sean Tucker today? Do you want to look at a Rashad Penny? Do you want to look at a, Chris Evans or essentially anybody behind these starters for any of these teams? I don't think you can make a good argument for the Rams, but maybe you have something and I'm missing it.
No, I think the tournament size you're looking for is probably over 100,000 entries, something like that. So the 500K up top, the flagship for tonight, definitely you can do something like this. I think the players will exclude Philly because they're running a little bit of a timeshare to begin with. But outside of the guys with feature back roles, their backups, I think the most likely to handle more work is Sean Tucker for Tampa Bay. Rashad White has been lackluster, to be kind. Now, Tucker is still an undrafted free agent out of Syracuse and a small back at that, so I don't think this is extremely likely. But if you were to poke holes in the starters, I think Rashad White has probably the most holes you can poke, being a slightly lower drafted player himself, playing in an offense where he hasn't gotten much efficiency. Wouldn't be surprised to see them take a change of pace. For plus, Tucker, I believe he had 8 carries in the last game. It's against the Bears, but still worth noting. I think Trevion would be second here, just because we've seen Joe Mixon spelled really throughout every point in his career with a pass-catching back. Similar to Sean Tucker, Trevion Williams hasn't been anything special as a talent, but he can catch the ball. So that's at least in the range of outcomes. And then I agree with you. I think Ronnie Rivers is the least likely to receive any sort of work tonight. Sean McVay's used a bell cow going all the way back to Todd Gurley days. And what he did with Kyron Williams last week was borderline Saquon Barkley in his prime, like David Johnson's prime, Le'Veon Bell in his prime. The guy played like every snap, pass catching work, goal line work, 2-minute, everything. Kyron did it all. So Ronnie Rivers would be the least interesting for me. I think he probably needs an injury to get something like anything remotely close to reasonable work.
Yeah, I'm with you. I guess at this point it's you're banking on an injury, because I think that there's still enough good players in this slate on on all four teams to where if one of these backup running backs happens to fall into the end zone, Matt, and finishes with like 3 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown, you're likely not going to need that. There's still going to be, like you said, it's such a soft slate that even a vultured touchdown for one of these guys without any production elsewhere, finishing with like 8 fantasy points, that's not going to be a spot where you get your head in your hands going, oh, I don't have any of this guy. It would really have to be that somebody gets injured. And that's just how I approach it, or how I'm seeing this one. Too soft of a slate to think that just a vultured TD with a couple of spelled running back carries is going to be enough to get it done.
I agree with you. You have what looks like 3 feature backs. So, I mean, even if one of those teams gets clobbered, doesn't receive much efficiency in the run game, like you could backdoor your way there with 3 catches, 20 yards, and then, like Trevion Williams with the 2 goal line carries falls into the end zone. You end up with Latavius Murray's stat line from yesterday, 8 points. Well, it's like, all right, Rashad White blew up, but he caught 4 balls. He's already over 8 points to begin with. And the price gap between them is not vast.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not big enough at all. You want to talk wide receivers here?
Yeah, I think this is the best position to talk about from a leverage standpoint. You can do a lot of cool things with wide receiver.
We'll build a lineup before we go. Oh, guys, one last thing before we get into receivers. We had the promo running all week for the lineup generator, $9.99 for your first week. It's a fantastic tool. It is undoubtedly the best tool for the price that you're going to find in the industry. Like, you're not going to find anything else. And by the way, today is the last day to take advantage of it, which is why I'm throwing that out there to you. Link in the description and chat. $9.99 for the first week of the lineup generator. Today is the last day. Like I said, you're getting Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday, and then Monday again. Best time. You have to find your spots when you're doing these promos for football. Baseball and basketball, you can do it any day of the week. It's every single day. With football, you got to stretch it across all of those days. You know what I mean? Just saying. Like, you wouldn't want to do it tomorrow. You do it on a Monday, get that slate. You go in, you can select what type of lineups you want, first of all, whether you want to do showdown or main slate. Then or what site you want to use. Then you select the type. You want to go chalky, contrarian, balanced, or just all lineups. You do that. After that, you can set your stack type. So you can actually do that today. I think today on a 2-game slate, I wouldn't be too worried about that. You're just naturally going to get to a bunch of stacks. But on a main slate, you would do that. And then run them back again with a different type of stack, like you would on Fantasy Cruncher or something. This is just, $9.99. And then you could see all of your exposures, right? You could see what the optimal projection for every lineup is. You can see what the ownership is. So then you can balance those out, save the ones you want, discards the one you don't. And if you're wondering how we create these, we're running thousands of simulated lineups behind the scenes. Like we do with the lineup simulator, it's just on a lesser scale and you don't see what's going into it, but it's the same results. Then after that, you save the ones you love, discard the ones you don't. Once you save them, you go in and Mike, don't go to Showdown. Is the main slate not out there? Then you go in and you can see your exposures to every stack, to every player, all of your lineups, then upload it straight to CSV. It's optimized for mobile. So if you're Keelan, who said he has a colonoscopy today and he was watching from the toilet, brother, you could pull that phone up on the can, fire off some bombs, and put together some good lineups out of the gate. Easy as that. Whether you're someone that doesn't have a ton of time in the day, whether you're somebody that's playing with, limited bankroll, but you still want to make better lineups, or you're just anybody, $9.99 for the first week. Today's the last day for the Red Zone. You don't need to use the promo if you use the link in the description or chat. It'll take you right there. It'll auto plug that in. Very cool tool. So check it out if you haven't done so yet. All right. Matt, wide receivers. You have actually some high price receivers. This is the only position where you have it. Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and then we'll get into Nakua and Evans and Higgins and all those guys. How do you approach the top tier today? Or is this just a mix and match situation? Because like you said earlier, there's nothing really preventing us from getting to these top priced options.
Yeah, I think I want to play 3 of them, at least. It's pretty easy to get to these guys.
In the same lineup, you're saying you could get to all 3 of those guys?
Oh, yeah. Not hard. You can play 3 of the studs without question.
Really?
I was building lineups this morning and had absolutely no problems getting there. With Hurts and 2 reasonable running backs. That's why the slate is so, really be worried about dupes tonight. Usually that's a showdown thing, but I mean, you're playing the 500 cap top, you're going to have to worry about duplication. Here's the lineup I made right now. Jalen Hurts, Kyren Williams, DeAndre Swift, Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, AJ Brown, Cade Otton, Trey Palmer, Rams defense. That's a lineup you can make easily.
Wow.
So having 3 studs, there's no hindrances. You really just have to debate, do I want to fade Jamar Chase to be different? Would I rather play Devontae Smith and AJ Brown together with Hurts? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself, not do I want to play 2 versus 3 of these guys? Extremely easy to get 3. So to kind of dive into them, I guess, you can poke holes in Chase probably more than any other elite receiver, assuming Joe Burrow is either out or limited in this game. He's had a terrible start to the year, and I think that's largely because of the Joe Burrow injury. So that's immediately something you could do to break a tie here. Puka Nacua is on the injury report, but he very much is expected to play here. I mean, straight up, we're at the point in the season now after these 2 games, and the usage Puka Nacua has, would you rather play Nacua straight up over Chase? I mean, that's a legit question, isn't it?
It is.
They're using him on, he's getting carries, he's getting scheme touches. They basically airdropped him into the Cooper Kupp role.
He has 35 targets in 2 games. Jeez, dude.
The only receiver that's been better than him is Justin Jefferson.
What about my boy Tyreek?
Tyreek probably now, but Tyreek's got a game up on him. Going into last week, wasn't Nacua ahead of him?
Going into this week, he was probably ahead of him.
I think he was. I think it was Jefferson 1, Nacua 2, and then Tyreek 3.
Amazing. Because week 1, Tyreek Hill had the 200-yard, 2-touchdown game. He went nuts.
And week 2, he had just some modest game.
I think he had 40 and a touchdown or something. Yeah, against Patriots. So, yeah. I mean, if you're talking PPR, Puka Nacua has more points on receptions alone than probably most receivers than most receivers in the league so far. He has 25 points on receptions.
Yeah. And if you don't believe in him, because it is a small sample size, again, you've got options play Chris Godwin, play AJ Brown, play whomstever else you prefer. But Nacua, man, I don't think I can fade this volume anymore. And the thing is, it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. Rhetoric out of Los Angeles, Nakua's our guy. Stafford clearly has a connection with him and looks to him frequently. Then, look at you can tell they clearly view this guy as a talented player because they're using him on carries. It's sort of like Deebo Samuel, where they've taken the approach through 2 games. We need to get the ball in this guy's hands any means necessary. It's carries, it's targets, whatever it is. We're going to manufacture him stuff. I think he has the highest floor out of any player on the slate, which is insane to say.
He has more points on receptions than Jamar Chase has in fantasy points on the season, and more points on receptions than AJ Brown has in fantasy points on the season.
Yeah, isn't that it's insane, man. It's insane.
It's out of control. Yeah, if they're going to target him like that, you just have to go back. Also, I saw somebody mention it earlier. Yeah, AJ Brown was a little bit frustrated last game, but they got the win. That he wasn't getting the opportunities. I think all of these guys are good. You just mix them in. But I'm with you on listen, at this point, he probably should be more expensive than all of these guys, especially with Joe Burrow's injury.
I love AJ Brown. Guys winning games constantly, but he's pissed he doesn't get the ball.
Yeah.
AJ, how would you like to play for the Bears?
Yeah, right. And then Jalen Hurts is the complete opposite. The complete AJ Brown's Jalen Hurts. I'll run the ball. I'll hand the ball off 100 times a game if it means we're winning. So they're also best friends, which is funny. But
yeah, it's hilarious. It's AJ, you only got 8 targets this game. How would you like to get 14 but play for the Bears?
Yeah. How would you like to get 14 where one of them is catchable? How about that?
Tough, man. I don't know.
Evans, Higgins. I mentioned, I think Godwin's a real nice play today. I definitely like Chris Godwin. Obviously, you could go back to, if you wanted to go back to Evans, no one's going to fault you for that. Both of those guys are viable. Not the easiest matchup, but I think they'll get the ball out quick. What are you doing with T. Higgins and the Tyler Boyds and really just the Cincinnati pass catchers?
I think T. Higgins is probably the guy that goes most overlooked. I'm going to kind of break this up into this 6 or 7 studs, and then the guys you can mix and match, the wide receiver 3 kind of types. But among, Nakua, Chase, T. Higgins, Evans, Godwin, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith, I think there's a chance T. Higgins goes overlooked among this group with the Joe Burrow injury. You probably get some leverage on Cincinnati in general, people just being scared of their output through the first 2 games. And then if you force people to click between Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I still think they're going to click Jamar Chase on a slate where salary restrictions aren't really there. And from beyond that, I do think you can get some leverage with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown as well. I anticipate people going back to Nakua. I think they should. And then with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin being so solid through 2 games, particularly Evans, I think you do see a fair amount of ownership there. All that is reflected in our tools as well. So I tried to cross-reference against what they say. So right away, among the studs, I think T. Higgins, Devontae Smith are going to be the 2 players you can get the most leverage with, followed by Chris Godwin.
As far as the low tier goes, Tutu Atwell, I'll consider it low tier, 5,000, but he's kind of in a league of his own there, price point of his own. I think Chris Godwin's price point is the most appealing at 5,700 personally.
Agreed.
But just too cheap in my opinion. I know he hasn't been great, but still. Tutu Atwell's 5K. Van Jefferson's kind of become an afterthought there. Tyler Boyd's 3,500. Damn. You hear that burp? That was straight protein bar coming up, Matt.
I didn't know if that was you clearing your throat or a burp. That's what it was.
That was, I didn't, usually you can prevent a burp when you're talking. That one really snuck up on me. Let me tell you. That was insane. I think we're good. All right, let's go. The cheap options, though, there's not a lot. Zacchaeus is down there at minimum salary without Quez Watkins. Maybe you want to take some dart throws on that. But it goes back to your original point. How crazy do you have to go on this?
To play all the studs, you need to punt once.
Right.
And
not including tight end.
I don't think Cade Otton's all that different from Dallas Goedert, to be honest with you.
Neither do I, but I'm saying, are you talking about like if you had Cade Otton, you'd still have to punt one of the other skill positions?
Yeah, you have to punt a receiver.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Gotcha.
Once. But I don't really hate the punts. You have guys that are going to play every snap. Van Jefferson, as bad as he's been, he's out there almost every snap. Olamide Zacchaeus, he's going to be out there every snap with the injury to Quez Watkins, or at least close to it. Trey Palmer, he plays a ton. Devin Tompkins, they play a ton. Tampa Bay runs a lot of like weird stuff with their player personnel. You can go back and look at their most recent game. You had Devin Tompkins 32 snaps, and then you had Trey Palmer at 35. Like these wide receiver 3-4s, we'll call them, play a ton for Tampa Bay. What I like for tournaments is there's 4 of them you can get to. So you don't have to just lock in one of these guys. You can play multiple. And honestly, if you're not comfortable playing one of them too, the one thing you have to do in your lineup is essentially you can go, let's say you were doing like a 2v2. You can go from Zacchaeus up to Tutu Atwell, and then all you have to do probably is draw from like DeAndre Swift to Gainwell. And that's the only 2v2 you need to do to come up from a min-price receiver. It's extremely easy. Or like you could do it at quarterback. I wouldn't recommend it. You can do it at a number of positions here too. I mean, the 2v2s, if you hate the min-price receivers, they're pretty damn easy to make.
All right, so we got MLB strategy show coming up next. Joshua Engelman's going to take you up. And then I got to go do a betting video for these games tonight. That should be fun, not knowing Joe Burrow's status. Check everything out on the Odd Shopper channel. Check out Matt's fire college football picks over there as well, and everything we all have going on. We got a ton of stuff going on over on the Odd Shopper YouTube channel. If you haven't joined us yet, would love for you to do so. But we got to get out of here. So let's hit on tight ends real quick. I think it's kind of straightforward. Cade Otton to me is the best for the price tight end on this slate. That is, again, I'm going back to Baker Mayfield. I really do think they're going to try and get the ball out of his hands early. It would be nuts for them not to. Cade Otton to me is at least somebody at this price point that makes sense, especially Dallas Goedert. They're not using him downfield. There's a ton of weapons in this offense, in this offense. The middle of the field is very good defensively for Tampa. Tyler Higbee at 4,400. I don't know why he's not 3,500 at this point. And then if you want to throw Drew Sample in there and get wild with Irv Smith not expected to play, you can do that. It's pretty straightforward to me. Cade Otton for the price, and you've said this since week one. Why pay for the $4,800 players when you can get the same guy for $3K? I don't think there's a better example of that than Cade Otton today.
You laid out all of the on-field stuff excellently, so I won't add to that. The only other thing I'll say is I was shocked at the ownership here. I thought it was going to be pretty smooth because Goddard and Higbee really aren't that different than Cade Otton at the end of the day. It's not like we have Kelsey on this slate. But right now, our projected ownership is Dallas Goedert, 39%, Higbee, 35%, Cade Otton, third highest, with the salary savings he gives you at 28%. And then, I mean, Drew Sample's still 16, so it's not like, all right, I'm getting Drew Sample at 5. Like, I like the ownership leverage with Cade Otton here, too. It's not just his role.
I know. If you had to rank those 4 tight ends, how would you rank? Because for me, it would be Otton, Goddard, I guess Higbee and Sample.
That's the exact order I would rank them to.
Yeah. Higbee is just, he could have a game, but he's kind of expensive for the production that we've seen out of him so far.
Yeah, 100% agree.
And then as far as defense goes, I don't really think there's much to talk about here. You could play any of these defenses today. And I mean it. You could play the Eagles against Mayfield. You could play the Bengals against the Rams. You could play the Rams against either a hobbled Joe Burrow or no Joe Burrow. You could play the Bucs against Philly. I really don't care one way or another. I have no preferences here at all.
This is the position I would put in last. You love your lineup. Find what fits.
Yep, 100%. All right, we got to go. Let's jam a lineup in here real quick to see what we come up with. By the way, thank you guys. We got almost 650 people watching with us this morning. I know it's a long shot. We're 50 likes away from 200. If you feel kind and you've got that single second to spare in your day, would be greatly appreciated. We need 50 to get to 200 to close this show out. Pretty sweet stuff. And if you guys are listening or watching after the fact, feel free to leave a comment down below. We try and read and respond to all of them. All right, Matt, I'll go first. And I'm not going to start a quarterback. I'm just going to plug someone in somewhere and see where we can. Actually, no, I'll start a quarterback. Screw it. I guess we have. You know what? I want to see what you were talking about as far as these builds go and how soft this is because I haven't built lineups. I'm going Jalen Hurts.
All right, I'll go Kyren Williams.
Okay. And by the way, this isn't how we'd normally build a lineup, but when you're doing it with 2 people, you can just go all over the place. I'm throwing Cade Otton there. Let's open some stuff up.
Love Cade Otton. I am going to go with Nacua.
All right. 25 receptions already.
I know he's a wagon.
All right. I'm going with my boy, Chris Godwin. We should probably get a Philly pass catcher at some point, unless you want to just run a naked Hurts. That'd be wild.
No, I'll go one right now. Let's go A.J. Brown.
All right, A.J. Brown. Still plenty. So we got 4,600, not including defense. So we're fine here. You know what? I'm plugging Joe Mixon in.
Okay. So then
By the way, defense. If you put the Rams defense in, that would give you 4,700 for the flex.
That's what I was going to do.
Okay, so just put Rams in, pick the final player.
Rams, and this will give us a pretty good chance to leave some salary on the board here. I'll go Tyler Boyd with the final play.
Okay, that is kind of a dead spot.
Yeah.
But leaving that salary makes it unique for sure. I'm not really sure where else. I mean, you know what? At this point, you could probably upgrade Rams defense if you wanted to, but I'm not really sure where the other upgrade spots are. Like, I wouldn't even have a ton of interest in. I don't know where I'd want to upgrade. You're right. You can do kind of anything.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of like going down from Mixon to a Philly running back, because then that gets you enough to at least get over Atwell. So you can play like a low 5K receiver, and if you time this or you like line up your salary correctly, you can get to another receiver that's pretty decent.
All right, so if we went away from Mixon and went Swift and got rid of Tyler Boyd, yeah, you'd have Atwell.
Okay. Gainwell's there. I mean, you could play.
That'd be a crazy team.
You can go 2 tight ends and play Goddard if that's your flavor. You just have more options there.
Yep. Hey, appreciate you guys hanging out as always. You are the best. We almost got to 200, Matt. That's a valiant effort. We're at 189. We'll get there throughout the day. Follow Matt over on the X, formerly known as Twitter, at Matt_Gajewski, me at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D. Everything's right there. Come say hi, and we'll talk shop throughout the season. Tell your friends about the show as well. And go watch Josh's strategy show coming up right now on the Stochastic YouTube channel. Shout out to Mike for producing. We'll see you guys back here tonight. Peace.